It's good to have you again.
Thank you. It's very nice to be on your show.
Could you tell us about Julian Assange's personality? Is his biography known? Where does he originate from?
Well, he's Australian by birth. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I must say, I don't know a lot about his biography. I mean, the main thing, of course, is that he founded Wikileaks and through that really exposed very significant war crimes by the West, by others too, but mostly by the West, including the murder of extrajudicial killing of civilians in Iraq. That was a big one. There was a video he exposed of that. But I mean, there's just thousands and thousands of documents that he has that show some of it is kind of mundane, showing the internal workings of the State Department and embassies, but some again really show misdeeds by, in particular, the United States in various wars, and so that's what made him an enemy of the U.S.
Well, I know it all started with Wikileaks. What type of platform is this?
Well, it's an internet platform, and I've used it many times, so I know a lot about it. It allows you, so it has all these documents, many of which had been classified at one time or another. And again, some of them are embassy reports, State Department reports. There's one just emails from Hillary Clinton. And by the way, those he was required to take off of WikiLeaks as part of his plea deal, the Hillary Clinton ones. But in any case, there's a treasure trove of government documents on there. And what you can do, it has a very good search engine. Whatever you're looking for, by topic, by department, by politician, you can plug that into their search engine and pull up all kinds of information on it. I mean, so that's what's interesting about it. A lot of it still hasn't been mined. That is to say, there's tons of stuff on there that no one's written about yet. I mean, you really have to know what you're looking for in a certain way, or have a certain curiosity to find those things. But it's almost like an online library of, again, once classified government documents.
Was information published on WikiLeaks generally secret and valuable?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of it had been secret. Had been confidential, not all of it, by the way, but a lot, significant portions of it were classified documents that someone over time gave to WikiLeaks. The most famous person who did that was Chelsea Manning, who was in the military, gave a bunch of classified information to WikiLeaks, which they published. That led to Chelsea going to jail for a number of years. And so, yes, a lot of it was secret or semi-secret information.
How was Assange's incarceration managed?
Well, so he was in Great Britain at the time when the charges came down by the United States. So they were U.S. charges, not British charges. But of course, Britain, being a very close ally of the United States, was willing to capture Julian Assange based on a U.S. warrant. At first, what happened is Julian Assange successfully went to the Ecuadorian government embassy in London and obtained asylum there. And he lived there for a number of years. I don't recall how long, but a significant amount of time. And that was under the administration of Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa, who was a leftist. But then Correa's successor, Lenin Moreno, who was actually handpicked by Correa, but who turned out to be not a good guy. He changed sides, essentially, became essentially a pawn of the United States. Once he became president, then he was willing to turn over Assange to British authorities, and that's what happened. And one day the British authorities went into the embassy because Moreno let them do that, and captured Assange, and he was jailed. And he was jailed for a total, I believe, of about 5 years, in addition to the time he spent in the embassy of Ecuador. And he was held for about 5 years, waiting extradition to the United States, which ended up not happening because, again, he pled out through this recent guilty plea.
Well, everything went wrong once he was arrested. I mean, I think he went through hell, actually.
Yes.
How did he deal with it?
Well, I think, he meditated a lot. He had a wife and kids. I think some of the kids were even born while he was in captivity. And I guess that gave him some hope. His father visited him as well. And there was a significant protest movement in Great Britain that continued to support him. And I think that helped him quite a bit. I think the protesters have to be given a lot of credit for keeping him going and ultimately leading to this chance to plea out. I think without that protest movement, he probably would have been extradited some time ago and probably would have been tried in the United States. But that protest movement really, I think, prevented that from happening. So I think people have to be given a lot of credit for that.
I'm just wondering, after all this time, Assange was released from prison in the UK this summer. But why this happens now, not earlier? Maybe, I don't know, someone profits from it?
Well, it's a good question. We don't know all the, inner thought processes that the prosecutors and the U.S. government had in offering this plea deal. But I suspect first of all, it had something to do with the fact that eventually he was going to be extradited to the U.S. Ultimately, I don't think that the U.S., particularly under Biden, wanted him extradited because it would be embarrassing for them, right? Well, we talk about democracy and freedom and human rights, and here we have Julian Assange brought in chains to the U.S. for being basically a whistleblower, right? This was not going to help Biden's reelection process. So I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened very close to the elections in November. I think this was one thing. Biden's already under a lot of pressure because of the war in Gaza, which is very unpopular. And I think Biden, again, the optics of Assange being extradited to the U.S., I just think was something that the U.S. government really didn't want ultimately, and decided to just give him a plea deal.
And talking about the US presidential elections, how will Assange's release affect it?
At this point, I'm not sure it will affect it that much. I do think had he been extradited, that wouldn't have helped Biden. But, the truth is, and sad part is that at this point, I'm not sure he's a significant issue. I think by November, his release will be largely forgotten. He's been allowed to languish so long in jail that a lot of people sadly have forgotten about him. And the press has done a terrible job. The mainstream press and mainstream journalists did not back him up. They should have supported him more. And they've allowed him to be largely forgotten in the public view. So I'm not sure, honestly, that at this moment he's going to be a factor one way or another in the election.
So is Julian is a criminal, or he's an advocate for the truth?
Oh, I think he's an advocate for the truth. I mean, I think that he is a hero, really. Him, Snowden, Chelsea Manning, people like that you need in a society where a lot of secrets are kept, and a lot of the secrets are about war and war crimes that the American people deserve, that the people of the world deserve to know. So we're lucky to have people like Julian Assange, for sure.
I want to discuss cybersecurity. There is currently a UN Convention Against Information and Communication Technology crime. More than 80 nations have joined this project. Do you believe that such measures help combat cybercrime?
Well, I'm not an expert on those issues, but I would think that it helps. Certainly, it is an international issue. It has no boundaries, right? The internet has no boundaries, and cybercrime has no boundaries. So, you really do need a multinational approach to dealing with cybercrime. So I would think that would help, yes.
Is it necessary to unify all countries in this way, regardless of current political differences?
Yes, I would think so. I would think it would benefit all countries to do that, right? Because cyber crime is a multi-billion-dollar problem, and it can do all sorts of things. You can have cyber attacks on electrical grids, on pretty much anything, water purification plants, everything's computerized now. So anything can be attacked with a cyber attack. So all countries need this. I mean, obviously the worst cyber attack would be on, say, nuclear weapons, creating a launch or something. That could lead to world destruction. So, every country has some sort of incentive for that, for cyber safety.
In your opinion, that's actually the important question, I think. It's really interesting. What principles should guide the operation of modern media?
I think truth, objectivity, and I think being critical of their own governments. I mean, the job of the media is to be a bulwark against government corruption. And when the media instead facilitates government corruption and misdeeds and lies, then they've abdicated their responsibility. And I think they have largely. You see that recently with the Biden, with his mental condition, where most of the media has been covering for him for years, pretending this was not a problem, chiding people who question his mental capacity. And then, you have this debate where it's clear he's greatly diminished. And of course, now the media looks stupid. They look like liars, which they are, in fact. But their duty is to be critical, not to be just mouthpieces of the government.
And my final question for this interview is, what really constitutes actual freedom of speech? What does Julian Assange's story make us think about?
Well, I think that freedom of speech is only real if it protects speech that threatens the status quo, right? Everyone can have freedom of speech if they don't say anything important, right? or controversial. Freedom of speech you need when people speak controversial truths, like Julian Assange did, right? I think that's what people have to keep in mind. People tend to say they like freedom of speech until someone says something they don't like. But that's when the freedom of speech is necessary. I like the line people say, I don't agree with you, but I'll fight for your right to say that. And that is how everyone should view freedom of speech.
So I guess Julian Assange was just saying the truth.
Yes. In fact, people point out, every newspaper you can think of has at one time or another had to retract a story, correct it, apologize for it. Julian Assange and Wikileaks didn't have to do that one time. Never were they exposed as being untruthful. That is an accomplishment. That's a true accomplishment.
Maybe people don't want to hear the truth. That's just my view.
No, they don't. As Fyodor Dostoevsky said once, it's easier to forgive someone for being wrong than it is for being right.
Thank you. Thank you for this interview. It was great. And I think it's going to be really useful. I mean, and interesting for people. They should know the truth, facts.
Absolutely. It's critical. And I appreciate you doing this interview. Thank you.
We're going to fight for freedom of speech.
Wonderful. I appreciate it.